Good afternoon, everybody. I am here, disconnected as usual, and I am with a label that I tend to really enjoy. And it seems like not a lot of people have been giving enough attention to on the movie side. However, they are solidified on the music side a lot more than most. So I want to welcome Enjoy the Ride Records and everything else that falls under that umbrella because it's a large umbrella. We'll get into that, I'm sure. But Ross, welcome. How are we doing tonight?
Good, good. Getting over being sick a little bit, but pretty good. Thanks for having me.
It seems to be going around. It's
Yeah,
that changing of it. I don't know about you. I know, aren't you in New York?
yeah, yep.
So I'm in Kansas City, and we were just talking about my wife and I this morning because the week before last, I think there was one day we hit a low of 34, and last week it got to 96 on one day,
Wow.
and
Yeah,
yeah, it has been miserable.
yeah. This planet's seemingly pretty fucked.
Yeah, and it seems to be a little upset and fighting back. So we'll see what happens, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah. Hopefully, yeah.
So Enjoy the Ride Records. There are a few different brands that are under that, but I'm curious, what is Ross's role with Enjoy the Ride Records?
The company is at this point, or I guess the whole time, has been pretty much just me, and then we have an operations manager that for the last 5 years has been a big part of the company, helping me kind of manage things as we grow or grew. But yeah, it's pretty much everything is me. I pack most of the orders still,
Wow.
and then obviously all the licensing and what we do is mostly, well, I guess I have final say, but like we discuss amongst us. Then I
Right.
usually talk to friends and get opinions and whatnot. But yeah, mostly Enjoy the Ride is me.
So needless to say, you're a pretty busy person, and obviously when you start a company like Enjoy the Ride, you have to like physical media. So I've obviously answered the question thousands of times, and for you, why physical media? Why is it something that's near and dear to you?
I've always been a collector of whatever I was really into, as I'm
Yeah.
sure a lot of the people that kind of run these companies have been, from baseball cards to pogs to wrestling figures, whatever I was into. And then obviously once I got really into music, you know, middle school, high school, and that was when I kind of dove in. And then I was collecting CDs, and then I actually got into vinyl really early when I was still in high school in like 2001, 2, 3. I got like the first dozen or so things, and then when I went to
Hmm.
college, I stopped collecting because I had nowhere to ship it or store it or you play it. I guess like I was in a dorm, I didn't have a record player or
Right.
anything. And then when I got out of college, that was when I kind of really dove in and noticed that a lot of the stuff that I grew up listening to, which was 90s and 2000s music or late 80s, 90s, 2000s, wasn't on vinyl or was impossible to get. And that was kind of how this started. I always wanted to be like a normal record label. Like I grew up in like the DIY punk scene, and like pop punk was really big on Long Island when I was in high school. So that was like a big influence on a lot of stuff I listened to. So I always wanted to kind of get into that and open the record label like that, which is what Enjoy the Ride started as. But I graduated college in '07, which was right as the economy kind of fell apart and Napster and all downloading was kind of at the height. So music was the last thing people were spending money on with little to no money, especially in
Right.
our age demographic when everyone was, you know, graduating or in college and had no dispensable income.
That's true.
So I signed one band, which was the first Enjoy the Ride release, and that was a slow burn, which ended up being great in the end, and it's one of my favorite albums, but was a slow burn in terms of getting, making money back first of all, and then in terms of getting a following, and then as I was collecting vinyl, Juliana Theory was a band I was really am and was into, and they tweeted out, I think it's some time for some Juliana Theory reissues. Any labels interested? And it was right place, right time. I didn't get the album or any of the albums I actually really ideally wanted, but I got the
Right.
B-side EP, which was the last thing left because I was obviously unestablished at that point, but I was incredibly excited at the time, and that was the first vinyl release, and that didn't sell incredibly fast, but a lot quicker than the band we were trying to build, and then I kind of went from there and kind of started focusing on what was working more.
Right. So I have not even alluded to any of this because I didn't want to soil the organic conversation that was going to come up through this. But I first off, amazingly, DIY punk, that phrase alone, suddenly in the last 6 weeks on this channel has come up probably about 80 times.
A
Not
lot,
even kidding.
I found that a lot of the people especially in the vinyl, like the soundtrack game,
Yep.
Mondo and Waxwork and Death Waltz and TerrorVision, like we all kind of were in this DIY punk
Yep.
scene in our various regions or whatever. Like Spencer from Death Waltz is a little bit older, and he's from England, but like we all kind of had the same kind of ethos, and it's interesting. Like we all kind of have a lot of interesting similarities when we hang out. That I noticed that you have to be a certain kind of person to kind of do this. That makes
That's
sense.
awesome. Yeah, and that's for me. I grew up sort of in the DIY punk music scene in Southern California, and ska was a big part of that, and hardcore, obviously, when really like the economy started to crash and everybody started to get angry. Kind of that was the big emergence there, and so yeah, hardcore is a big part of everything. And speaking of Juliana Theory, I'm stoked that you name dropped him first because that was going to be the first thing I talked about tonight. I grew up on Zayo.
Right. Yeah.
I'm huge into Zayo. I've been on stage with them before. Dan and everybody. Brett has been a big part of everything for me. For
Ironically, Brett, which like I've told him because like we have a bunch of mutual friends, and like we actually for that release we like met up in New York City at the time. He was doing a film score or a TV score, some sort of score. Ironically,
he's everywhere now.
At that point, I had no involvement with score music, so it's weird now looking back.
Right.
Yeah, we met up, and I brought him a bunch of like the coolest records I had color wise at the time, and I was like, these are the things that I think are cool that can be done. What do you want to do? And that was the beginning. But yeah, like I owe him. He doesn't realize, I'm sure, but like without him putting out that tweet, who knows? I probably would have eventually gotten into it because I do love vinyl regardless. But
right
place, right time, easier said than done otherwise. But
that is incredible, and especially for a musician like that he genuinely had a large impact in multiple music genres, which is rare, especially in this day and age. Back in like the 80s and 90s, it was a little easier, but with everything he's pulled off, it is amazing. And the other names that, I mean, like Dustin Kendrew, you guys have put out stuff for. Thrice has been a big part for me. I'm just jealous of the scene that you've been able to work in.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a lot of times it's very surreal. Like a lot of these things obviously take a long time. Like there's projects that aren't out that are 5 years in the making. Like ETR 66, I think, is still hopefully maybe gonna happen, and we're on 160 something now.
Right.
Like yeah, it's crazy, but yeah, like at the end the juice is worth the squeeze usually.
Yeah, some of these labels that we've talked on what takes for longer, some of these deals, first off, they start slow, and then by that point you've already signed it, but then there's problems. And I'm curious, what is the longest from like initial talks to putting it out on ETR?
Well, the longest that's actually out
yes.
Is actually coming out in a couple weeks, which we've kind of announced, but whatever. But Mortal Kombat 3 Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, I guess technically is the name. That's been in the works. They had the artwork in hand for approval for at least 3 years.
Jeez.
Granted, like pandemic was right before the pandemic started, or maybe 6 months to a year before, and then that didn't help. But in terms of coming out, the Mortal Kombat stuff has been a very long road. But like I'm a collector myself, as we've obviously discussed. So like, like I know at the end of the day, these things are going to live on. And like, if you wait an extra 6 months to a year, if that makes a total difference of getting something approved, that would make the release incredible to, lackluster or decent, like it's worth the time. Like the people on the back end or whatever, the customers, have no idea how long it takes. At the end of the day, they want what they want, and whatever it is, they'll buy it if they like it. And, like it's worth the time to make it the right way. In Mortal Kombat 3 in particular, I had a vision for what I wanted the art to be, and I knew to some degree, based on what we did for the first one, we would hopefully be able to get it approved. It would take a really long time, and I hope and think everyone's going to be really happy with it. And then
we are.
Yeah, and then the other one I just mentioned has been like 5+ years in the works. The entire time that our operations manager has been working with us.
Oh, geez.
And that still isn't technically approved. It's multiple corporations. It's a major label license, and then it's a property of a different corporation, and they had to sign off on it, which we got a couple of years ago. And I don't even know. But
not to mention a pandemic, vinyl delays. Yeah.
But and there's a company buyout that also made things complicated. But if it comes out again, it will hopefully be worth it, I think.
I'm sure it will. And, speaking of being worth it, everything I personally have from Enjoy the Ride, which is not a small number of things, I love every single piece. Everything is, pleasing to the eye, the hand, the ear. Everything is made with, when it is a collector behind it, you can tell it is something that
I
has.
appreciate that because like a lot of the times like you don't really get feedback directly, and like I don't know, it seems like a waste of money sometimes when you don't really
Right.
actually hear the feedback. But like it's very nice, obviously, to hear it, and I appreciate it, and thank you.
Well, it's another ongoing theme. I've talked specifically, and we're going to get into the movie side, obviously, but I've called it Vinegar Syndrome Month, leading up to the sale. And one of the things that I appreciate in a lot of these newer partner labels that they've been working with is it's not just slap a movie on a disc and put it out. It is legitimately an experience, and for a lot of these, I can't imagine seeing this, put out in some lesser product and just thinking, yeah, that's cool, I guess. But I'm astonished when somebody puts the quality behind it like you do, and it is noticed and appreciated.
That's awesome. Thank you. I really do appreciate it.
So other than enjoy the ride, you've got enjoy the tunes, which absolutely makes me feel like tickly inside every time I see everything that you guys have put out. It is such a weird nostalgic kick. Enjoy the tunes. How'd that come about? Is that something you've always been into as well?
Yeah, so like I wasn't really into like Muppets or like Sesame Street really much growing up. I was more of like a cartoon kid, and yeah, so I'm 37 now. So like Nickelodeon, all the Nicktoon stuff was when I was like
Right.
5 to 10. So that was the stuff I really grew up watching over and over. And to be honest, like it's a separate label because I thought it was going to be mocked and or potentially fail, and I didn't want it to be associated with Enjoy the Ride just in case. So at the time, there wasn't a lot of soundtracks. The first thing I went after in probably 2013 or 13 probably, and it came out maybe 14 or 15, which was the Best of the Nicktoons thing. At the time, Mondo Death Waltz just maybe started, and there wasn't any animated. They were doing, like Maniac and, Escape from LA and shit.
Right.
So the only thing reference wise was a company did My Little Pony, which to me, I thought was laughable, and I always associated them in my head with My Little Pony. So at the time, I was like, I don't want to be that company when I'm doing pop. At the time, I was mainly doing pop punk emo stuff, basically a lot of stuff I grew up listening to. Drive Through Records and Equal Vision, a lot of that stuff. So I didn't want to like be left out of that community for doing the Nicktoons. So I thought I would do a separate label just in case, kind of as a failsafe, I guess. And then that did incredibly well. And then I kind of ran with it, or have been running with it since, which honestly is some of the more enjoyable stuff just because I have some artistic input. Like for band albums, I can't, I'm not going to change the album cover.
Right. The thing they've been known as for 20 years.
Standpoint, and from a like sales standpoint, like people want what they grew up listening to.
Exactly.
And being a collector, I get it. I'd be pissed off. So at least for the cartoon stuff, it's a lot of times stuff that hasn't been released at all, or stuff that the artwork was whatever stock posters. And if we're dealing directly with the right holders, we can sometimes work things out, hopefully.
And you worked with some big names. I mean, you mentioned, Muppets and the Henson Company. You've done a lot of the movie soundtracks for them. Enjoy the Tunes has all kinds of animation that you've put out throughout the years, and it's the library is genuinely large at this point, and you guys are killing it. It seems like.
Yeah, there's like 35 Enjoy the Tunes releases, and we're working on like the 160 something of Enjoy the Ride. That said, there's like half of them that are tunes are joint Enjoy the Ride, Enjoy the Tunes catalog numbers. The rule, I guess, like I tried to come up with some sort of guidelines. That way it's not like, I don't know, if it's family friendly, I think it should be Enjoy the Tunes. Like Ren and Stimpy is both Ride and Tunes because it kind of walks the line. It's technically a kid show, but it's not really. Like Ace Ventura 1 and 2 also. That was like that was one of the earlier ones where I think that was maybe the first one I did both Enjoy the Ride and Tunes, because I was like, it is kind of like it's a kid's movie, but it's not really at all.
Right. It fits. I like it, and that's smart when you broke it down in the beginning, just in case it failed. But I love a success story like that when it blows up in the other direction. I'm stoked for you.
Yeah, like I hope we can keep, like, there's so much dream shit that the issue with that stuff is a lot of the stuff we want to do, especially cartoon stuff, has never been released on any format, and it's a nightmare. And the older these things get, both from like composers, like the Transformers stuff. We did the Transformers TV show, the first time that score music was released on any format, and the composer passed away like a year and a half after we put it out, and we were hoping to do volume 2, and the same guy did the gem music and some other music. And supposedly the tapes exist, but his family needs to go through it, and he's the one who knew the names. And I don't think they're labeled, so like I don't know. We've been trying for years to try to push that forward, but it's a task, especially when like there's no names that like only he would know that information from what I gather, unless it was cataloged a certain way, which I kind of doubt.
Probably not. Yeah.
But yeah, so a lot of the stuff is just a very long, complicated road. But there's a lot of shit we've done. Like Hey Arnold was a very long, complicated process, but again, very much in the end worth it. And we hope to do more of that. We are trying and have tried doing Rocko's Modern Life, the same sort of thing, but Nickelodeon has changed a lot of whatever higher up people, and some people get it, some people don't. Some people don't want to be bothered with it. We will continue to try, but a lot of these things are out of our control.
That Hey Arnold release seemed to sell really well for you guys.
Honestly, we sold the most out of anything with that repressed, including, granted, like if we repressed for Korn or Rob Zombie, for example, we could probably sell more than Hey Arnold. But out of everything that we pressed, we're coming up on like 10,000 copies, which is insane.
Hey Arnold, man, that is amazing. I'm so happy for you guys. It's so nice to see it thriving, and especially for what seemingly was literally a dead format for a long time, and it has risen back from the dead, and now we're at a point where vinyl is delayed everywhere because it's so popular. How's that affecting the company?
It's a lot of different ways. It seemingly went from like 10 to 12 week turnaround time to like 10 to 12 months in like 6 months to a year probably. 2020, thankfully, we kind of didn't have much of a delay or too much of an issue really last year, and now this year it's gotten really bad. Thankfully, like we work enough with the same couple places that like we have some spots held, and we're able to kind of push things around that like either represses and or like as we get new deals, we kind of slide them in. But we've been trying to up what we have, which is not that much at all, especially compared to large companies, especially majors. But in general, we've been trying to up it at this point for a year and a half, 2 years, and we aren't able to. And even with, granted, we have like 24 vinyl releases in the works right now in various stages. But that said, we are pushed back until March, April of next year at this, so around a year out.
God.
And that's just pressing, and then shipping now is becoming increasingly more complicated and
more expensive. That has exploded in the last 2 years.
Everything is more expensive. There's PVC labor costs on top of like just like additional tacked on fee on the invoices on top of everything else going up, on top of the shipping, on top of the licenses, because vinyl's popular. So obviously supply and demand, more companies are coming out trying to get stuff. And especially some of the unestablished companies like don't really know what's customary, and they're trying to establish themselves. So they're just throwing money if they have the money. It seems seemingly throwing more money than they should at things, which in turn is making it more complicated and raising the rates for everything.
Ruins it for everybody.
Like when I got into, at this point, we've been selling vinyl for 12 years, give or take. And single LPs at the time were like 17, 18. Like I remember the first, so Juliana Theory was the first release for vinyl, then RX Bandit's Progress was the second. And that was a double. And I remember at the time, the most limited variant, there's 500 copies, 200, 100. And you can only get the 100 variant if you bought a bundle. So it was the three colors. And it was $60 for all three. And people, I remember losing their mind how that was ridiculous. And like, those are $200 records now that people would murder to get for $20 a piece. They murdered to get one for $60, a lot of people. And but
that's
market's got real crazy in every which way, both manufacturing and collecting and people being vocal. And
that's the other side too. There was a worldwide paper shortage for a while, I'm sure affected you guys.
We try avoiding pre-orders because again, like I'm a collector, so I've been there. I've been there from a customer standpoint, and like pre-orders suck, and more often than not, the people who are placing the orders don't have experience with vinyl and don't understand that like certain swirls are not going to come out the way that you think they're going to, and then they're advertised the same way or a certain way, and they never come out the way that they are, and it's a mess. People are very impatient increasingly with the internet and the pandemic. People just want what they want. People are used to Amazon. People don't understand that they're like, a small company on the other side of people that like are working tirelessly to make this happen, let alone like don't need their bullshit. So yeah,
In the last 20 seconds, I think you've hit on about 40 of my major talking points over the last year. I've had quite a few labels on, and each one has had legitimate like horror stories of people that just can't handle this anymore and not understanding, not that you're just not Amazon, but 2 days, that is unreasonable to expect something to be at your door.
And people choose media mail literally, at least for us, 95% of the time.
I can't imagine doing that.
You can't expect it to show up within 3 days if you're choosing the cheapest, slowest option. And like even so, it's not in our control. If you choose the option, once I drop it off at the post office, which you see I already did, there's nothing that can be done.
Right.
Like you emailing me every other day is not going to help.
Let me call the postmaster in Tennessee and talk to him for you.
Yeah, and like international isn't much better, as you can imagine.
Right.
Granted, like things always get there, but especially with the pandemic, things take 3 months sometimes. And once it's in the process, like there's nothing we can do. And especially if it's in your country, which often happens, like you have to contact like your post office. It's in your country already. There's nothing I can do about it.
Like they expect you from New York to, yeah, that's messed up. I've noticed with international stuff that us shipping out has risen exponentially, but coming in has risen at a slower rate, even though it's still gone up slightly. So everybody that was shipping inwards when they're trying to order from here is getting more pissed off because they're like, prices are the same, just get it out. And in all reality, I went from being able to ship like a single movie to, Toronto for maybe like $11 on the high end, and now it can be like $25. It is literally exploded in prices.
And also everything is based on, at least for international, or I guess really everything is based on the pound. So like people don't understand that it's a double LP in a gatefold jacket with the inner sleeve and with whatever. So like it ends up with the box ends up being over 2 pounds. People are like, it's ridiculous. It's $35 shipping for a $35 album. But like, because it's a double LP, you could order 2 single LPs and it would be the same thing. It's the same weight. There's nothing that like, that's just science and physics. And
it's how it works. Yeah. So other than enjoy the ride, enjoy the tunes, now we have ETR Media. And that has been, it's still fairly new. It's not something that's been super established. But at this point, we have a total of 3 releases. Oh, wow. And how did this start? How did you get coined up with Vinegar Syndrome?
We met some of the guys from Vinegar Syndrome at MondoCon, actually. I guess that was 2019? Yeah, that sounds right. So I just kind of had them in the back of my head, and then we were doing some soundtrack stuff, and so we reached out to them about that, and then that naturally, so we did the Green Jelly live album first before the Blu-ray, and it came with a DVD because previously it was only available on YouTube and then on a VHS that came with the Kickstarter funding thing. The director is a huge VHS collector, Rob. He's co-producer on a VHS YouTube channel, like collecting channel. Like he's like, his basement is insane. He has like a tour. It's crazy. But that said, so he only did it on VHS because that's kind of his thing. Right. And then I was like, we worked out the live album thing, and then I was like, could we put it out on DVD in the package, basically just the disc inside of the record jacket. So we did that, and then when we were talking to Vinegar Syndrome about some stuff, he saw that, and I think that was how it originally started. I think they were buying some stuff from us, and then he was like, if you happen to be able to get the Blu-ray rights, like we'd be interested in partnering to put that out. So I reached out to the guy, and he was interested, and that was how the first one happened, and that did pretty well. And then Commando Ninja was the second one, which we already had done the vinyl soundtrack for, and similar thing. We already did the vinyl soundtrack, and we had worked with the director, and it was a small enough film that, I could easily get in touch with him and try to work something out. And same thing, our partners at OCN basically said, like, I think that would do well for us. If you can get the rights, we'd be interested. So that was relatively simple and easy, and that's done pretty well. And Scream Queens, so we did the soundtrack to a movie called The Shed, which was on Shudder, a horror film. So that came with a month subscription or a month free code to get Shutter trial or whatever. So that was around whatever, a year and a half ago. And at that point, I was just going through Shutter and seeing what was on there, and I came across the Scream Queens documentary, which might have been exclusive to it at the time.
Yeah.
I'm a really big documentary.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm really big into. I like a lot of varied stuff. Generally, like 90s, and like I haven't seen a lot of pre me being alive stuff. My parents really aren't pop culture people. They really aren't collectors. I'm very different than them. So most of the like media I found was through either me stumbling upon or friends or watching MTV or watching HBO or whatever, just kind of me stumbling upon stuff. So yeah, so most I'm really into documentaries. And
I personally, like, just this morning I rewatched this for I think the third time. The feature on this is great. I mean, obviously you guys didn't produce it necessarily, but you can tell this, I mean, it screams everything that you guys have always done. It's got that same level of quality and care put into it. I mean, how many times are they putting out these die cut slipcovers that are so unique to this style of release? And obviously the marking is clearly related to A Nightmare on Elm Street, but after watching the documentary, it has a lot more of a meaning. It really, the claws in this case go deep in this movie. And I don't know. I just appreciate every single ounce of passion that shows in every realm of your physical media. I mean, you guys got cassettes that scream that same exact thing. It's astonishing.
The Blu-ray designs, I have to give credit to OCN, and they also, like, we all kind of collaborate. That packaging was done by an artist named Haunt Love, who does a lot of punk rock stuff. He's done a bunch of Laura Jane Grace stuff randomly, I believe.
Nice.
But he, yeah, a lot of that was us kind of all collaborating. But yeah, like, I try making, because anything could be gotten digitally at this point, so it's not mandatory that in order to experience media you have to buy it. So personally, again, as a collector, like if it has some sort of theme, looks like a VHS, looks like a video game, looks like something nostalgic that, you know, gives you a nice little dopamine hit, then I think it helps for everyone.
It absolutely helps. And just like you, I guess similar backgrounds, but a different way to get there. I was raised in a super small town, so we really only had like a Blockbuster, and obviously they're not going to have a lot of this cult stuff. It was, we'll put out Top Gun, and we know that'll sell well. So a lot of this I discovered on my own after like 18 or 20, and the documentaries are one of the things that really found my passion for a lot of this. Like Zayo and Brett and everything, they put out that The Lesser Lights of Heaven when they had it. I think it was like 2005, and it's like a 6-hour Zayo documentary about the history. And Brett was so like calm and composed and this enlightened voice throughout the entire thing. It drew me to him, and that's one of the reasons I found you guys in the very beginning, is just from following Juliana Theory. And those documentaries can really create this passion in the people that are watching them. So how about we sell Green Jelly to some people that have never heard about it?
Sure.
What can you tell me about this one?
So Green Jelly is, if you're unfamiliar with them, they're like kind of a one-hit wonder that had the Three Little Pigs nursery rhyme rock cover song, I guess is how you would describe it. That said, Green Jelly is basically Bill. Bill is the guy clearly in the middle there. It's been one member more consistently since I think the early 80s, I believe, is when they started. And he is quite the character. The general concept, I guess, that catches the general synopsis that is interesting about the whole band and the documentary is that there's like over 1,000 members in the band. Basically, Bill came up with this concept that people are only really coming to see him, and the band around him doesn't really matter. And the band's hit was the early 90s. So most of the people that love that hit and love the band are around our age and would love to basically be in the band for a weekend. So what he does is he basically sets up a weekend warrior trip to whatever region or whatever state and gets somebody to book the show and tells them, get a band, learn the songs, pick me up from the airport. I'll be there. We'll have an awesome weekend. I'll get paid and I'll go home.
It is a really well-made package. Again, lots of special features on here.
Yeah.
There
So
are
Rob, the guy, the VHS collector who directed the film, he's in the band. He's one of the 1,000 band members. He's in the Canadian chapter of the band. So a lot of the special features are when he is on the road during a weekend or a bunch of weekend gigs. There's also has a bunch of shows that I believe he's also playing on. So yeah, there's a lot of bonus stuff, which is directly from a member of the band who is the director. So you can't get much more in there.
that is the definition of behind the scenes there. I
Yeah.
love that sort of thing. And it's not short. Like I
Yeah.
said, I appreciate when these are experiences. And with something like this, sure, you pop in the feature, but then if everything else is a supplemental package, I can sit there for 4 hours and
That's
ingest
the
it
reason
all.
I personally buy Blu-rays and physical media is like the bonus features. Like I said, you can stream anything at this point.
Right.
I buy it personally for the bonus features, especially if there's like a mini documentary. I personally really like watching how things are made because
Same.
I guess that's partially what I don't make movies, but although one day I'd love to be involved in that. But like I love watching things being made, and very often the behind the scene process is more interesting to me than the actual finished product.
Exactly.
Especially like this era of stuff. My favorite era is like early 90s, kind of where like it's still a lot of practical effects, but some CGI. And like
Right.
I think Terminator 2 personally is like an incredible gem of how it was molding of everything, and it just all works so well seamlessly. Like
They flew a helicopter under a bridge in that damn movie. Come on.
every time they put out like a new deluxe version of that, and there's new special features, I buy it just because how they made that film is crazy to watch, and even now holds up 30 years later.
Really does. And I mean, all the CGI that we weren't even calling really CGI at the time, it looks fantastic even now.
Right.
So you're talking about videos of that era. So this looks like it has to be from like 1981, right?
Right. Right. So Commando Ninja, basically like an 80s action movie homage that was filmed recently, similar to like Kung Fury, I guess is, if people are familiar, I guess that's probably the best thing to describe it to. But yeah, also very well done and clearly a lot of passion behind it.
So this one, I know personally, I've sold probably 5 or 8 copies of it because the first time I watched it, I went, "Oh my god, people need to know about this." And what you just said was perfect because this is one I believe you still can. It's available to watch on YouTube for free right now. So why get a package? Because there's an hour behind the scenes documentary, and then on top of that, you can take this anywhere and watch it with friends and make a night of it and spread the love forever. Because this movie is wild and hilarious and just it's like the perfect hangout movie.
Right. Yeah.
I love this package. And then, like I said,
they like Miami Connection and Kung Fury. Like it's like a nice little in there kind of thing.
I think it's better. So Scream Queen, this is the newest release currently, and this is first off, it was available on DVD prior, and it was a really release. But this, man, it blows everything out of the water.
This one kind of happened. I guess they all kind of happened randomly. But this one in particular, so like I said, I saw the documentary on Shudder, and really, I watch a lot of documentaries, and I'm not particularly a huge Nightmare on Elm Street fan, but I don't know, like it was a very well made, interesting documentary. It had a lot of interesting context around it that wasn't just about like the making of the film per se. So I think I followed their account on Instagram just because I wanted bonus stuff, and I thought it was interesting, and I figured there would eventually be a Blu-ray. And the Blu-ray they put out was only available in Brazil and had like all this cool bonus stuff. And I asked them if we could, and I saw what I wanted to buy one, and shipping was insane, which goes back to what we were saying before. So at that point, I asked if they would like be willing to sell some wholesale, and we could distribute it through OCN possibly, or work something out. And then they're like, the shipping cost of getting it there or there and back is more than just manufacturing it. Like, would you be interested in doing your own thing? And then that was kind of how this happened.
Interesting. That is a nice way in. And it goes to show that these off the wall happenstances can literally lead to some of the best packages.
I have a lot of like random things that like meant to be kind of moments on a weekly basis, things that just like correlate with each other that like it's hard to explain.
That's awesome. Yeah, I completely get it. I've had some random things. I live in Kansas City now, but I grew up in California, and the amount of times, I've ran into people that grew up in this tiny desert town, or they've got family there. It's like, how? There's 12,000 people that live there. That makes no sense. I love those type of stories. So you said you're a collector. What are, some of your favorite records of all time that you go back to?
Like just albums listening to, or like physical media albums? That's a loaded question.
Kind of.
Um,
Just want to hear more about your personality, because really, when you discover the people behind something like Enjoy the Ride, it really tells you a lot about what that means to that person.
Sure. One of my favorite bands, I would say off the top of my head, is Glassjaw. If you're familiar, they're from around here, and yeah. That said, I'm into a lot of different music, so obviously it's hard to pick off the top of my head. But like my first, which I always find interesting now that I do a lot of score stuff and kind of where my career ended up going, the first album I ever bought with my own money was the Jurassic Park score.
It's such a good score.
And then later on, I traded that in high school to my best friend for Oasis. And I think the first album I ever got from like that, like I asked my parents for, was Dookie before that.
Nice.
So I think that's pretty indicative of like my musical taste of those three things.
Very 90s story there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Most of my life is pretty 90s centric.
That's good. I mean, there is a lot of rich things that came out of the 90s that really, there's a lot of like subcultures that still don't have a whole lot of representation nowadays. The whole nostalgia aspect really seems to be focused on the 80s, and a lot of it nowadays seems to be bypassing the 90s and going straight to the early 2000s and the emo side of things. It's just it's an odd thing, because there are literal subcultures that have nothing. There's hardly anything out there.
It's crazy now with the internet, which like I always say, because like now that the internet's been around for like 20, 30 years, like there's so many pockets and like people, like Facebook groups of just like obscure whatever.
Right.
But
and that's why I love, bands like Juliana Theory and being able to discover other places through groups like you, because without that, these people would never explode or get a new fan base or anything. And just hats off to you. That's a big deal.
Thank you. For better or worse, like the ETR catalog is incredibly varied, which in some ways is a blessing, in some ways is a curse, because like there are, as far as I know, there is no one who has every Enjoy the Ride release or anywhere close to it, because the same person that likes whatever RX Bandits likely doesn't want the score to Hugo,
right?
But so that said, in the same vein, like we can kind of do what we want, and we don't have to just do horror or just do whatever. So in a way, it's nice, but at the same time, like there are some people for other companies that just are diehard. I'll buy anything they put out regardless, which originally was what I wanted with the label when I was trying to sign bands. I wanted to be, I trust this person's opinion or this team's opinion or whatever, which is kind of how I grew up with music, that like I love the X amount of these 5 labels, and I would immediately give it a shot because they signed them.
I agree.
But
I've noticed the varied in the Enjoy the Ride records. It's obviously not in a strange way or anything like that. It all sort of has this running theme of it's all very high quality, obviously, but it really is a perfect segue to all of the partner labels for OCN, because with Enjoy the Ride and OCN, there's kind of something for everybody. There's like every type of music, every type of movie. With ETR Media, is there a certain feeling or theme or anything that you're running for the releases, or is it just what Ross enjoys?
Most things are mainly, I guess, what I think other people should know about that isn't out there in, I guess, the quality or the capacity that I feel it could be or should be. That being said, we have a bunch of other stuff in the works. We have probably like 5, 6 more things that are signed that are in the process of probably coming out, hopefully by the next year, if not before. That said, they're in the same vein, which I'm kind of trying to like not make it completely random, which are pop culture, documentary, skewing towards music or somewhere in the music vein, and then whatever you would consider Commando Ninja.
I love that that is its own genre. That's
and then there's another film that we have that's coming out that is very similar, not the same people, but in the same kind. If you like Commando Ninja, you will very much like this film. So I don't know what exactly that genre is considered.
Yeah, it's mostly I just always called it a hangout movie. There's so many different things that make it just fun to get a room full of people and just enjoy it. And
Right.
I mean, again, that leads back to the label. It's enjoy the ride. Be along for all of it and just grab hold and see what you enjoy.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. Enjoy the ride is also like a pun. So I was in a car accident. So I always wanted to open a record label. And then right out of college, I was managing a friend's band, with possibly the intent of signing them or whatever, seeing where that went. And we got into a car accident coming back from the studio of them recording their debut EP. And the car flipped a couple times, and I ended up getting I ended up crushing my hand and having to do physical therapy for like a year and getting a little bit of money out of it. And that funded basically the label, which I had some money, but way under what I anticipated being. And that was just to sign a band. Well, originally I wanted to sign 2 bands. And then I quickly realized that there wasn't nearly enough money to do that. Then I ended up signing 1 band that cost way more than I thought. And then with the leftover of that, I used that to do Juliana Theory. And then for 5 years plus, I was recycling every release I would put out. I have to sell X amount to recoup and do the next. And then thankfully, a few years ago, we reached a point where we're past that. But with so many projects in the works and these delays, it is definitely still very tricky to manage.
Well, I mean, again, a kind of a perfect segue to say, support these companies, support small business, do what you can to be kind. These places are not Amazon. Ross is personally doing these for you. And at this point, it is important to literally archive it, because some of these scores literally will be lost to time.
That's a lot of what I think I hope to do. Like, Hey Arnold would have never existed. That music was only given out at the rap party for the show to the people that worked on the show by a bird CD by the composer. And there's still tracks that aren't out there. We want to do volume 2. This is called Hey Arnold, the Music Volume 1, with the intent of doing volume and the plan of doing volume 2. And then whoever the powers that be at Nickelodeon switched over. And as of now, it's not going to happen. But previously, the music was only given to people that worked on the show, and God knows how many of those people actually. I'm sure they were left on the table at the banquet hall or whatever.
Right.
For the most part,
Jeez, yeah, and I mean, the other side of me is thinking about the personal side of things. You do this for a composer that dies a year and a half later. Imagine how good that felt to finally have that in his hand a year and a half before his legacy is
I hope
over.
So. I really do. And Transformers in particular, same thing. Like, it took a long time to get what I envisioned getting approved, which was the gatefold was like a really nice image that previously was part of like a Japanese toy catalog in like 1986. That it was just a beautiful piece of spread out art that as soon as we got the license confirmed, I went online and started doing a bunch of digging, and I bought a Transformers book and came across a piece of art, and I was like, how can we get this? How can we get this included? And so I really hope he enjoyed it, because I try going the extra mile and making it as nice as it can be, given the legal and whatever circumstances involved.
That's incredible. That is the sort of thing that makes me just want to do it myself as well. I get inspired by something like this and be able to see what you can pour into it. And basically all I can say is these companies need support. I mean, we don't want to see Ross get in another car accident from the next Juliana Theory record. So go out there, support physical media. Ross, is there anything else you want to throw out there that I have not mentioned about Enjoy the Ride?
No, I don't think so. I think you kind of covered everything. I made a couple notes, and I think we're good.
Well, on a closing note, they have three videos that are currently out through Vinegar Syndrome, and they are all available and will be during the sale. They all 3 have their limited slipcover left at the moment, although
Dream
1 or 2 of them
is going quick and has only been out for a couple of months.
Right. And obviously, it's going to be because it's a bigger title, related to A Nightmare on Elm Street. But that slipcover is gorgeous too. So if you want it, get it quick. This is going to be up tomorrow, so everybody's going to have a week to prepare and make sure that they can get everything in line before the sale. Ross, thank you for your time. I appreciate you guys. The amount of quality shows, and all I can do is thank you for everything that you poured into it.
Thank you so much for all the kind words. This has been awesome, and thanks for having me on and trying to get ETR Media. like we haven't really pushed it that much through the label. It's more of
Right.
like a Vinegar Syndrome kind of partnership thing. It's more of their market. But yeah, I really appreciate you trying to give it some visibility. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And we have, like I said, we have a few things in the works that we're excited about that we can't talk about yet, but we'll definitely be announcing eventually.
And that's the thing. I've noticed some of these partner labels, they get all kinds of attention, but you guys, a couple of these I really, really love. And I think, especially the documentaries, more people need to get these things. Commando Ninja is fun as hell, but the documentaries are just near and dear to me. I love everything that goes into these.
I think Commando Ninja is more of like a word of mouth thing. Like some people are
Yep.
getting it, kind of eventually tell it like, oh, have you seen this? When people are looking for stuff to listen to. I'm in a bunch of like movies so good they're bad groups, and or so bad they're good groups rather.
Right.
I'm in a bunch of those, and yeah, I think every once in a while people are looking for recommendations. It comes up, and then eventually, a lot of what we do is word of mouth and passion projects that like I hope that we bring more visibility to it, and that
Right.
like we did like the Lancelot Link album randomly, and like that is something that I honestly wasn't that familiar with, but like is a really fun bubblegum pop, like 60s, 70s power pop album that like the people that know, like I think we brought some sort of visibility to it that people that were aware of it before. And that one we did a lot of fun stuff with the art also, which was we made like a homage to our operations manager is a huge James Bond fan,
Nice.
so it's a secret agent kind of show. So we did like an homage to one of the Bond soundtrack covers, but
That's
replaced them
awesome.
basically with characters from the film.
That's perfect. All the links for ETR are in the description below. Please click them. Please support them. Follow them on social media. They deserve all of your attention. Ross, thanks again. And
Thank
as
you.
I always say, from one collector to all of you, have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.